In a moment, we're going to be talking about Trump and Pete Hegseth appearing at the Pentagon yesterday. And while there, Trump talked about how he wants the military to start using American cities as training grounds, and he has said that he's going to send, or I guess is sending, the military into Portland. As a senator from Oregon, what have you seen so far, and how do you respond to Trump's proposition here?
Yeah, a week ago, Thursday, he announced he's going to, quote, do a number on Portland. He said, I'm going to have the Secretary of War deploy the troops, and I'm going to authorize them to use full force, and we're going to do a number on Portland. So we held a press conference, and I called it the Don't Take the Bait press conference. And we had all the local leaders, the mayor, our congressional delegation, the local city council members. Don't take the bait. What the president is up to is he wants to create riots in Portland. And so by sending an influx of federalized troops, well, he's hoping there will be conflict, and then conflict justifies more authoritarian power. So understanding this, our reaction has to be, don't take the bait. And so this is the message we're giving to people. Yes, protest, but don't protest by getting engaged directly with any of these officers. Now, it turns out that some things have developed in that instead of sending a whole bunch of different forces from different organizations the way he did in 2000, right now, 2020, what he's planning to do now is to federalize 200 of our Oregon National Guard, send in leadership. So it basically decapitates the leadership that's in Oregon and sends in separate leadership. They're going to go through a couple days of training. There is a hearing this Friday for a stay. And why is that stay being considered? Because the power that the president's using, the authority he's using, is called Title 10. And it says the president can send in troops when there is an invasion or a rebellion. And this is very important because our founders were terrified of a standing army. They had seen dictators create an authoritarian state by using the power of an army. So they didn't want a standing army. They didn't trust it. And then 150 years ago, we had a general agreement that troops, and it's called Posse Comitatus law, that troops would never be used inside our cities. This exception being invasion or rebellion. So I'm hoping that we'll hear from the district judge an injunction saying there's nothing that qualifies as an invasion or a rebellion. I went past the ICE headquarters, which is what Trump is focused on, a couple times this last week, and I saw 3 women standing out with signs that had flowers on them. And are you kidding me? That's a rebellion? That's called an American protest. That's called freedom of speech. That's called freedom of assembly. That's as American as apple pie. There have been a few conflicts, kind of like the equivalent of a bar fight over the last couple months, but well within the ability of local police to tackle. Nothing that would constitute a rebellion. Think about a rebellion. What's a rebellion? Like the Civil War, that's a rebellion. Shays' rebellion at the founding of our republic, that was a rebellion where you had a mob seeking to tackle a local armory and grab guns. So what Trump is doing is very much out of the authoritarian playbook, extremely dangerous. And then he followed up, as you mentioned, by talking to the generals yesterday morning. And he says, first of all, it's a loyalty test. You all don't like what I'm doing, leave the room, but you'll probably lose your rank. Okay, so loyalty to the Constitution is the oath they took, but Trump wants loyalty to the president. It's very dangerous. They said a group of you are probably going to be in charge of this strategy of sending troops to cities and making it a training ground. A training ground for what? For how troops are deployed across America. Folks have been coming to my town halls and saying, and I've done 36 of them this year, saying, we are really worried that the president is going to create some emergency power, is going to say as emergency power, it's going to postpone elections, people are going to basically protest against that, and he's going to send in the troops. Is this what he's planning? Is this training so that troops will be prepared to go into cities? Once you go across this threshold and you do it repeatedly, it becomes easier and easier to repeat the precedent. I think this is an extraordinarily dangerous moment for us. with an authoritarian president who's violating the Constitution left and right, and now talking about developing a habit of putting the military into our cities.
If we take Trump out of the picture for a moment, what do you think needs to happen in Portland? I'm curious about that. You can correct me. I mean, there have been obvious, as you just mentioned, instances of political violence in Portland, less than, I should say, social bar fights, for example, but bar fights maybe with some political animus behind them. So what has to happen in Portland? And I ask that as somebody who doesn't like the expansion of government power, particularly in law enforcement, particularly domestically. But is it possible that there's like this giant opening for Trump to seize on disorder in Portland, as Democrats have let political violence fester in some cases in the city?
There's been very little violence in Portland. If you walked through Portland, you would just go, this is a city on the rebound. Of the 65 largest cities in America, it had the biggest decrease in murder rates year over year, at 20%. In fact, it was cut in half. It had one of the largest 20% decrease in violent crimes. You see, the city has been rebuilding from COVID, rebuilding from the 2020 conflicts with Trump and his first administration. Things that have been closed down are starting to open back up. We see the impact of course, homelessness and drug use, and those impacts are less visible now as programs have ramped up to provide alternatives and assistance. I mean, Portland's been on the rebound. You would not recognize it as looking anything like what Trump has described. And if you have a few people who want to create disturbances, and they've been coming late at night and throwing some stones in a very small number, that's where the local police arrest them. And that's a local police function. You throw a stone at a federal building, you put off a fireworks aimed at a local building, even if it's not an ICE building, any building, that's a local police response. So there's nothing here that comes close to justifying federalization of the National Guard or sending in troops of any kind.
And we don't have much time left, but I did want to just get your quick perspective on your trip over toward the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's sites over there. One of the few American non-mercenaries was able to get close. You know, how close were you able to get, and what was your interaction with kind of GHF officials? What was your takeaway? As you and Senator Chris Van Hollen had made a trip there.
And the trip was much broader than just trying to get into Gaza, though that was a goal. We were turned down by the Israeli authorities. We then arranged to participate in a Jordanian overflight where they drop humanitarian aid. The Israelis canceled the flight. I mean, we were in Jordan with the C-130 cargo planes all getting ready to take off, and Israel canceled the flights. They didn't apparently want an American observing Gaza from the air. But then we were able to go to the border at Rafah Gate, where we'd also been in January of 2024. But this time we were able to go through the transition area between Egypt and Gaza because the gate shut down. And at the far end, we were able to climb an outside fire escape to the roof of a 3-story building, stand on the ledge, and look out over Gaza, and just see, over Gaza, but over the city of Rafah, and just see everything reduced to rubble. It's one thing to see the satellite photos. It's another thing to stand there and just see that every building blown up. It was stunning because it was just such visible evidence of the strategy. A twofold strategy of ethnic cleansing. The first strategy was destroy all the homes, not just that they're empty and the city's been emptied out and there's shell holes or got, no, everything blown up so you can't return. And the second strategy of deprivation of food and clean water and medicine. And now we have a famine for the most vulnerable populations inside of Gaza. We have horrendous impact on children. Can you imagine 2 years of bombs falling, your family members dying? You've moved 5 or 6 or sometimes 10 times. No place is safe. No school can be held. Malnutrition rolls into famine. And it's the international workers say worst hellhole in the world as a result of this strategy designed to drive people out of Gaza. That was very powerful. We met with so many groups. We met with the families of the hostages. We met with soldiers who had served in Gaza. We met with international workers who had been inside. We met with World Food Program workers who had been inside. We learned about all the strategies to block the regular delivery of food that are constantly being used to extend this famine. What the same values that made me a passionate supporter for Israel are the same values that say what the Netanyahu government is doing is horrifically wrong. It's a violation of international law. It's a violation of every humanitarian or religious creed. It is just horrific, and America is complicit because of our close relationship, and we haven't used that close relationship to say hell no to this strategy of ethnic cleansing.
And for people who don't know, Rafah is a city that dates back to at least the second millennium BC. Alexander the Great was there, continuously occupied basically for something like 4,000 years. What was it like to see this, one of the most ancient cities on the planet, just reduced to non-existence?
You couldn't recognize anything because it's all just rubble. So you see no signs of, you couldn't make out, if you will, where was something that was ancient, significant. It's all just rubble. But what really struck me was to recognize that 6 months earlier, 1 million people were in that city. And just as in Gaza City, a few months ago, 1 million people were in Gaza City, and now Gaza City is being razed and blown up in the same fashion. If this proceeds, you will find that you have 2 million people crowded into a small area on the very southwest corner of Gaza, Gaza is already a very small place. And where are they going to go? Well, the goal is to make life so miserable that they will self-deport. American government's called it voluntary departure. There's nothing voluntary when you're being starved to death and indiscriminately bombed. So this is not all that's going wrong. You have on the West Bank another strategy, which is that green light has been given for settlers to engage in massive harassment of Palestinian villages, cutting the villagers off from their olive orchards, cutting them off from their vineyards, cutting them off from their springs or their wells, proceeding to run livestock right up into and often through these villages, and then assaulting the villagers when they leave the village itself to check on their lands or so forth. And it's that also is to drive everyone out of Area C, basically a de facto um, takeover of the West Bank. That is wrong as well. We 1947 vision was two nations for the two people. The world supported and endorsed and made happen the Israeli nation, but we never solidified a Palestinian state. This is why I introduced a resolution, the first of its kind, saying to the President of the United States, we should be recognizing a Palestinian state. The failure to do so has been a festering wound that's contributed to the cycle of violence in the Middle East. And I was pleased that 9 of the senators joined me. So 10 senators did something that hasn't been done before, and that is to speak up and say, we've made a mistake. Whether it was through Camp David and Oslo and all time since, we never actually recognized the legitimacy of a Palestinian state. And it's time to make that happen. I do want to say that in the peace plan the president just put forward, there's a lot of elements that are the best step I've seen this administration make towards a fast, hopefully a fast ceasefire and the start of something new and better. We need a ceasefire. We need a massive influx of humanitarian. We need the return of all the hostages. We needed to break this ethnic cleansing strategy. It's better for Israel to break that strategy. It's better for the Palestinians. But let's build on a ceasefire to create a prosperous, peaceful future rather than have this haunting cycle of violence infect the decades to come.
Right. And we'll talk more about that plan later in the program. Up next, we'll be talking about Trump and Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon. Now, Senator Jeff Merkley, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure to be with you, Ryan and Emily. Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.